sucking air through a straw. Black spots danced in my vision as coworkers' faces swam before me. Astrid, are you okay? Someone touched my shoulder, but their voice sounded miles away. I tried to stand, to reassure them I was fine, but my legs betrayed me. The room tilted sideways as I crashed to the floor, knocking over stacks of purchase orders I'd stayed until midnight organizing. Papers scattered like frightened birds. The last thing I remembered was someone shouting for help as my body convulsed. I woke briefly in the ambulance, oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. The paramedic hovered above me, pressing buttons on equipment I couldn't identify. "We've contacted your emergency contact," she said. "Your boss, Mr. Preston." Through the haze of pain, I heard the radio crackle. The dispatcher's voice came through. "I have Mr. Preston on the line regarding employee Astrid Werner. Mr. Preston, your employee has suffered what appears to be a severe stress-induced collapse. We're transporting her to Memorial Hospital. As her emergency contact, we need... God..." His voice cut through, clear and cold. "She's just replaceable. Let her handle it." A pause. "I'm not paying for this." The paramedic's expression shifted from professional concern to personal disgust. She clicked off the radio and squeezed my hand, but I was already drifting back into darkness, those words burning into my brain. Replaceable. After 6 years of building his business from a struggling shop into the most successful kitchen supply company in 3 counties, replaceable. After canceling my mother's 70th birthday celebration to cover when his wife had insisted he attend their anniversary cruise, replaceable. After creating the custom kitchen design service that had tripled our revenue and made his name known to every restaurant owner within 100 miles, the hospital ceiling came into focus 3 hours later. The doctor's diagnosis hammered the final nail in my professional coffin: severe exhaustion, dangerously elevated blood pressure, and acute anxiety. "Your body is shutting down," she warned, writing on her clipboard. 2 weeks minimum recovery or you risk permanent damage. As they wheeled me to a room for overnight observation, I spotted Preston standing at the nurse's station, not checking on me, signing papers, refusing financial responsibility. When his eyes met mine, he simply turned away and walked toward the exit. I had no idea then that this moment of abandonment was just the beginning. I couldn't have known that in 14 days, I would return to find my entire life's work stolen, my position eliminated, and my future destroyed by the man I'd helped make rich. And I certainly had no way of knowing how completely I would dismantle everything he loved in return. If this story sounds familiar to you, if you've ever been tossed aside despite your dedication, then you understand this pain. Show support by hitting like, leave a comment about your experience with workplace betrayal, and subscribe to hear more stories of justice served. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. My name is Astrid Werner. Until that collapse, I was the general manager and chief buyer for Preston's Kitchen Emporium. Not the most glamorous title, but I'd built it into something that made me proud. I started as a part-time sales associate during college, studying business management while learning every aspect of commercial kitchen supply. By 24, I was running daily operations. By 27, I'd completely transformed a failing business into the premier culinary outfitter in the region. Preston had inherited the shop from his father, a man who'd built real relationships with local chefs. But Preston lacked both his father's charm and knowledge. What he did have was me, someone who lived and breathed kitchenware, who could explain the difference between German and Japanese steel to professional chefs, who remembered every restaurant owner's children's names and what grade they were in. I wasn't just a manager. I was the heart, brain, and soul of that business. My apartment was filled with cooking magazines and supplier catalogs. My phone constantly buzzed with texts from chefs asking for recommendations. I attended every food industry event, cultivating relationships that brought in exclusive contracts. I'd even learned enough Spanish to communicate with the back-of-house staff at our restaurant clients. My social life? Non-existent. Dating? A distant memory. Family events? Missed more often than attended. But I believed in what I was building. Preston's role mainly involved appearing at major sales meetings I'd arranged and taking credit for my innovations. He'd show up in expensive suits, shake hands, and tell stories about his vision, while I quietly ensured every detail was perfect. I tolerated this arrangement because I loved the work itself and the respect I'd earned within the industry. What made the betrayal so bitter wasn't just his words in the ambulance. It was what awaited me when I returned after my mandatory recovery. The morning I came back, something felt wrong immediately. My parking spot, unofficially mine for years, was occupied by a shiny new sports car. Inside, the store layout had been rearranged, destroying the careful flow I'd designed based on years of sales data. The specialty knife display I'd handcrafted with a local woodworker was gone, replaced by a garish prefabricated stand. When I reached my office, the door was open. The nameplate reading A. Werner, General Manager, had vanished. Inside sat a young man in his mid-20s, feet propped on my desk, talking loudly on the phone about golf scores. "Excuse me," I said, standing in the doorway with my return-to-work note clutched in my hand. He looked up, annoyed at the interruption. With a dismissive gesture, he covered the phone. "Sales floor is that way. Staff isn't allowed in management offices." Before I could respond, my assistant Tilly appeared, her face a mask of discomfort. She pulled me away from the doorway. "Astrid, I'm so sorry," she whispered, glancing around nervously. "Mr. Preston moved you to inventory. That's Dax. His son." "His son?" I repeated dumbly. "What son?" Preston never mentioned a son. "He's been away at college, or dropping out of colleges, from what I gather. Mr. Preston said you'd be handling inventory count in the basement while you recover." Her eyes wouldn't meet mine. The basement, where we stored excess stock and seasonal items. No windows, harsh lighting, concrete floors that ached after an hour of standing. Where we sent employees who couldn't handle customer interaction. "Where's my desk? My files? My computer?" My voice sounded strange, even to my own ears. "Dax has your computer. Your personal items are in a box by the time clock. Your files." She trailed off, then added in an even quieter voice, "Mr. Preston said most weren't necessary anymore. They're implementing a new system." I found Preston in the stockroom, examining a shipment of copper pans. He looked up as I approached, his expression carefully blank. "Welcome back," he said flatly. "Tilly, explain your new position?" "No," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. She couldn't explain something that makes absolutely no sense. "I built this department. I created the customer relationships. I developed the ordering systems. And you collapsed in front of our biggest restaurant client," he countered. "Proved yourself unreliable. My son needs real-world experience. This arrangement works for everyone. I collapsed because I worked myself to illness for your business." He shrugged, turning back to the copper pans. "Nobody asked you to. The counting room is waiting. We need the German knife shipment inventoried by lunch." As I turned to leave, he added casually, "Oh, and Astrid, the staff knows Dax is in charge now. Don't make this uncomfortable for everyone." The basement counting room was exactly as I'd feared, cold, damp, and isolated. My desk was a metal table with a clipboard. No computer, no phone. Just endless boxes to count, record, and restack. Through the ceiling, I could hear footsteps, conversations, the bell above the door announcing customers. My customers, the people I'd built relationships with for years. By midday, I heard raised voices upstairs. I recognized Chef Anton from the Rustic Table, our biggest restaurant account. His booming voice carried even through the floor. "What do you mean you don't have my order? Astrid confirmed it last month." Dax's smooth, practiced response was too quiet to make out clearly, but Anton's reply wasn't. 3 weeks until opening night, and you're telling me now? Where's Astrid? Put Astrid on the phone." Over the next 2 days, similar scenes played out repeatedly. Regular customers asking for me, confusion over orders, pricing disputes. Through snippets of conversation, I pieced together what was happening. Dax was blaming computer errors and previous management mistakes for his incompetence. On my 3rd day in basement exile, Tilly snuck down during lunch. "It's chaos," she whispered, handing me a sandwich. "Dax has no idea what he's doing. He told Mrs. Bianchi that silicone spatulas can't go above 300 degrees. She nearly had a fit too. She's been baking professionally for 30 years. Why is Preston letting this happen? The business will suffer. Tilly glanced nervously at the stairs. There's more. Preston's been coming in early, before anyone arrives. He's in your old office, with the door locked for hours. And Dax is telling everyone there, we're structuring vendor relationships. That night, I couldn't sleep. Something deeper was happening. Preston was many things: arrogant, credit stealing, dismissive, but never stupid about money. He wouldn't risk client relationships unless something else was at stake. My opportunity came the next morning. Assigned to count a shipment of premium Japanese knives, I noticed oddities in the paperwork. The shipping manifest listed 36 8-piece sets, valued at over $300 each, but only 24 sets were in the delivery. I checked previous records. The pattern repeated across multiple high-end shipments, expensive items ordered and supposedly received, but significantly fewer actually in inventory, always with Preston personally signing the delivery confirmation. The pieces clicked into place. The business wasn't struggling because of my absence. It was struggling because inventory was vanishing. And with me relegated to the basement, Preston had eliminated the one person who would have noticed immediately. But why put his unqualified son in charge? The answer came during week 2 of my demotion. I overheard Dax on the phone, his voice echoing down the stairwell. Dad's handling it. Yes, the audit is scheduled. No, nobody knows. Once the business sells, we're clear. They were selling the business, but not before skimming valuable inventory and blaming the resulting problems on mismanagement. With me out of the picture and Dax leaving a trail of customer service disasters, they could justify the declining performance to potential buyers. My heart raced as another realization hit. My collapse had been the perfect opportunity. They'd probably been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment to push me aside. That night, I sat in my small apartment, surrounded by industry magazines and catalogs I'd collected over years. Have resources for a career that had consumed my 20s and now lay in ruins. My phone, once constantly buzzing with client messages, sat silent. In 6 years, I'd missed family gatherings, ended relationships, and postponed my own dreams to build Preston's business. For what? To be discarded like yesterday's trash and blamed for their theft? The breaking point came during our annual kitchen showcase event. Every year, I coordinated a massive demonstration for our top clients, restaurants, culinary schools, catering companies. This year, despite my demotion, I was ordered to prepare all the materials but forbidden from attending. From my basement prison, I listened as Dax butchered my presentation to Granville Hospitality Group, an account worth nearly $200,000 annually. He mixed up orders, promised impossible delivery dates, and actually corrected their executive chef on knife techniques. The meeting ended with the client walking out. As I heard the door slam upstairs, something inside me snapped. The last thread holding together my professional composure broke. I wasn't just angry. I was incandescent with rage. That evening, instead of going home to my empty apartment to stare at the ceiling, I sat in my car and drafted a plan on the back of an old invoice. Not a complaint to labor authorities or a passive-aggressive resignation letter. No, something much more satisfying. The next morning, I arrived early and requested a meeting with both Preston and Dax. They exchanged suspicious glances when I entered the office, my former office. I want to apologize, I said, surprising them both, and offer my expertise to help train Dax properly. Their shock gave way to smug satisfaction. Preston leaned back in his chair, my chair. That's very professional of you, Astrid. We could use your institutional knowledge during this transition period. Dax smirked. I guess I could learn a few supplier names from you. Exactly, I replied with a smile that made my face hurt. Why not extract everything useful from me before discarding me completely? If they caught the bitter edge in my voice, neither showed it. Preston actually laughed, mistaking my comment for self-deprecating humor, rather than the declaration of war it truly was. Starting today, I'll create proper training materials, I continued. I'll share my contact lists, explain our ordering systems, and teach Dax everything about the business. For 3 weeks, I became the model employee. I created detailed guides for each supplier relationship. I introduced Dax to key clients. I documented every process, appearing to transfer 6 years of knowledge. Meanwhile, I meticulously recorded every inventory discrepancy, photographed shipping logs, noted which expensive items arrived but never made it to the sales floor. I scheduled meetings with major suppliers to introduce Dax, deliberately booking overlapping appointments he couldn't possibly handle, all while gathering evidence of their plan to strip the business before selling it. What Preston and Dax didn't realize was that I wasn't just the store manager. I was the person every supplier trusted, every chef respected, and every competitor recognized. I hadn't spent 6 years building Preston's business. I'd spent 6 years building my reputation, and they were about to learn exactly what that was worth. The Regional Restaurant Association's annual meeting, our biggest sales opportunity of the year, was scheduled for Thursday. On Wednesday night, I stayed late, promising to finalize the presentation materials. Preston actually patted my shoulder as he left. "I knew you'd come around, Astrid. Sometimes change is for the best." I waited until his car disappeared from the parking lot before I began. First, I removed every training document I'd created over the past 3 weeks from the shared drive. Then, I disconnected the backup system. I took the presentation materials I'd prepared, along with the custom order forms for our biggest clients. Finally, I opened the supply closet, where we kept promotional materials. Every business card, every brochure, every catalog that featured my direct contact information, I took them all. The next morning, I didn't show up for work. I turned off my phone as it began buzzing with increasingly frantic messages from Preston and Dax. Instead, I drove to the convention center, where the Restaurant Association meeting was being held. But I didn't go to the Preston's Kitchen Emporium booth. I had another destination in mind, one that would change everything. I entered through the service entrance, where caterers and event staff bustled about. Having coordinated our booth for 5 consecutive years, I knew every security guard and event organizer by name. They waved me through without question, another advantage Preston had never bothered to notice. The main exhibition hall buzzed with activity. Culinary professionals in chef whites mingled with restaurant owners and food service directors. These weren't just customers to me. They were people whose businesses I had helped build, whose kitchens I had helped design, whose staff I had trained on proper equipment use. From a distance, I spotted our booth, Preston's Kitchen Emporium, displayed in bold lettering across the backdrop I'd designed last year. Dax stood awkwardly beside it, already tugging at his collar despite the early hour. Preston paced nearby, checking his watch repeatedly, phone pressed to his ear. He was calling me, no doubt, wondering where his presentation materials were. I smiled and turned away. My destination lay elsewhere. 2 hours later, Preston's moment arrived. The association had scheduled him for the coveted mid-morning presentation slot, a 15-minute window to showcase new products to the entire assembled membership. I'd secured this opportunity 6 months earlier, through careful relationship building with the organizers. From my position at the back of the room, I watched Preston approach the podium, confidence plastered across his face. Dax trailed behind him, carrying an empty folder, the one that should have contained my meticulously prepared notes and product specifications. "Good morning, distinguished members," Preston began, his voice booming through the sound system. "Today, we at Preston's Kitchen Emporium are excited to announce our new line of professional-grade," he faltered, glancing at the projection screen behind him. The slideshow hadn't appeared, because it was on my laptop, sitting in my apartment. "Technical difficulties," he muttered. "While we resolve this, let me tell you about our exclusive importing partnership with..." He turned to Dax, who shrugged helplessly. Neither of them knew the names of our Japanese knife suppliers, information I deliberately withheld from my training materials. A chef in the third row raised his hand. "Will you be continuing the custom kitchen design service? We're expanding next month." Preston's smile tightened. "Absolutely. Our design team is restructuring for greater efficiency." "Is Astrid here?" called another voice. "She promised to bring specs for that new ventilation system." "Astrid is pursuing other opportunities," Preston replied smoothly. "But my son Dax is now heading our customer relations department and will be happy to assist you." All eyes turned to Dax, who stepped forward with artificial confidence. That's right. And we're very excited about our new cooking things. The room fell silent. Then came the murmurs. Chefs and restaurant owners exchanged glances. Someone snickered. Chef Anton from the rustic table stood up. What happened to the custom ordering system Astrid promised? Our new location opens in 3 weeks. Dax blinked. I'm not familiar with any custom system, but I'm sure we can, It was finalized last month, Anton interrupted. Astrid showed me the prototype forms herself. Preston stepped in. We're reviewing all systems implemented by previous management. Some were not aligned with our business direction. Previous management? A woman called out. Astrid built your entire business. The room erupted in confused chatter. Preston tried desperately to regain control, but without my presentation materials, without knowledge of the products or client relationships, he floundered. His 15-minute slot dissolved into an embarrassing display of incompetence. That was my cue. I slipped out and made my way to the small conference room I'd reserved that morning. Inside waited the 20 most influential buyers in the region, all personally invited via text messages I'd sent from my private phone. Thank you for coming on such short notice, I said, closing the door behind me. I promised you an exclusive preview, and I intend to deliver. For the next 30 minutes, I presented the most comprehensive analysis of kitchen supply chain challenges the association had ever seen. I detailed supplier relationships, price fluctuations, import considerations, and custom solutions for each business represented in the room. As of today, I concluded, I'm establishing Werner Kitchen Consulting. My focus will be ensuring restaurants like yours receive exactly what you need, when you need it, from reputable suppliers with verifiable inventory. I emphasized that last part pointedly. But aren't you with Preston's? Asked a confused catering director. My position there has recently changed, I replied carefully, which has created an opportunity for me to serve you all more directly, without overhead constraints. I distributed business cards, not Preston's, but my own, printed overnight at a 24-hour shop. Simple, elegant, with my personal contact information. For those interested in discussing specific needs, I've prepared detailed proposals based on our previous conversations. I placed a stack of folders on the table, copies of client information I'd been collecting for years. Information that had never made it into Preston's official files because I'd kept it in my personal notes. By lunchtime, I'd scheduled meetings with 15 major accounts, not as a representative of Preston's Kitchen Emporium, but as an independent consultant who knew their businesses intimately. As I exited the conference room, I nearly collided with Preston himself. His face had turned an alarming shade of red, and sweat beaded on his forehead despite the air conditioning. What the hell are you doing? He hissed, grabbing my arm and pulling me aside. Where are the presentation materials? Where's the custom order book? I removed his hand from my arm. I believe those materials fall under my intellectual property. I created them on my personal time, using my personal expertise. You work for me, he spluttered. Worked, I corrected. Past tense. I'm submitting my resignation. Effective immediately. His eyes narrowed. You think you can just walk away? After everything I've done for you? The laugh that escaped me held no humor. Everything you've done for me? Like abandoning me during a medical emergency? Like demoting me after 6 years of dedication? Like putting your unqualified son in my position while you systematically stripped inventory from the business? His face paled. What are you talking about? The missing knife shipments. The copper cookware that never made it to the sales floor. The specialty appliances signed for but never inventoried. Do you think I didn't notice? You're making dangerous accusations, he whispered, looking around nervously. Based on nothing. Based on documentation I've been gathering for weeks, I countered. Every discrepancy, every missing item, every falsified receiving report. Behind him, I spotted Dax approaching, his expression thunderous. Preston held up a hand to stop him. Astrid. Preston's voice turned conciliatory. Let's discuss this privately. I'm sure we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. I smiled. I've already made arrangements that benefit me, and all the clients you've been neglecting. Preston's demeanor changed instantly. The mask of reasonableness dropped, revealing the cold calculation beneath. "You signed a non-compete agreement when I promoted you to manager," he said quietly. "You can't simply take our clients." "I reviewed that agreement during my recovery," I replied. "It prevents me from working for competing retail establishments within 50 miles. It says nothing about independent consulting." His jaw clenched. "No one will work with you. You have no capital, no storefront, no inventory. I have something more valuable: trust and knowledge of what you've been doing with that inventory." Before he could respond, Chef Anton approached, clapping a hand on my shoulder. "Astrid, there you are. Your presentation was brilliant. When can you visit our new location to finalize the kitchen layout?" I smiled warmly at Anton while Preston stood frozen beside me. "I've got an opening tomorrow afternoon. Why don't we discuss it over lunch?" As we walked away, I glanced back once. Preston and Dax stood motionless in the bustling convention center, two islands abandoned by the tide of industry relationships that had just shifted irrevocably in my favor. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind. Working from my apartment, I coordinated with suppliers I'd cultivated relationships with over years. Many were already suspicious about inconsistent orders from Preston's and welcomed direct communication with the person they'd always really dealt with anyway. I received a cease and desist letter from Preston's attorney, claiming I'd stolen proprietary information. My reply was simple: documentation of inventory discrepancies spanning 18 months, with an offer to share this information with the appropriate authorities if they pursued legal action. The letter was never mentioned again. Meanwhile, I watched from a distance as Preston's Kitchen Emporium began its slow collapse. Without my client relationships, without my product knowledge, without my systems, the business floundered. Dax quit after being publicly humiliated by Chef Anton over incorrect equipment specifications for his new restaurant, specifications I had personally designed for the space. But the real satisfaction came 6 weeks after the convention. I was meeting with a restaurant supply manufacturer when my phone buzzed with a news alert: local business owner under investigation for insurance fraud. The article detailed how Preston had been systematically reporting items as damaged or lost to insurance while actually selling them through unauthorized channels. The investigation had begun when several suppliers noticed discrepancies between what they shipped and what appeared on store shelves. What the article didn't mention, what no one knew except me, was who had compiled that initial evidence and anonymously submitted it to both the insurance company and the suppliers. By month 3, I had established Werner Kitchen Consulting in a small office downtown. My client list included nearly every major restaurant and catering service that had previously worked with Preston's. My reputation for honesty and expertise had only grown stronger through the contrast with Preston's public downfall. I received regular updates from Tilly, who now worked as my administrative assistant. Preston's Kitchen Emporium was hemorrhaging money. The restructuring had become a liquidation. The building was listed for sale. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, as I finalized kitchen plans for a new culinary school, my office door opened. Preston stood in the doorway, soaked from the downpour, looking 10 years older than he had 3 months earlier. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice neutral despite the hammering of my heart. He stepped inside, water dripping onto my new carpet. His designer suit had been replaced by casual wear that hung loosely on his frame. "You won," he said simply. "The store closes next week. The legal fees have taken everything else." I set down my pen. "I didn't do this to win, Preston. I did it because you left me no choice." "By promoting my son?" he asked incredulously. "That justified destroying my life's work?" "No. By saying I was just replaceable when I was literally collapsing from overwork. By abandoning me during a medical emergency. By stealing from your own business while blaming others for the consequences." He flinched at each accusation. "The business was failing," he admitted quietly. "I needed the insurance money to keep it afloat until we could sell." Dax's position was meant to be temporary, just long enough to establish him as part of management for the sale. "You could have told me the truth," I said. "After 6 years, you owed me that much." He looked away. "Would you have helped?" "I rebuilt that business from nothing once. I could have done it again." We sat in silence as rain pattered against the windows. Finally, He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. The liquidation company found this in the office safe. It belongs to you. He placed it on my desk and turned to leave. Preston, I called as he reached the door. He paused without turning around. I'm sorry it ended this way. He nodded once, then walked out of my office and my life. The envelope contained a faded photograph from the store's grand reopening 4 years earlier. Preston and I stood before the newly designed showroom, champagne glasses raised in celebration. On the back, in Preston's handwriting, couldn't have done it without you. Too little, too late. As I placed the photograph in my desk drawer, my phone chimed with a notification. Chef Anton's new restaurant had been selected as one of the top 10 openings of the year. The article specifically mentioned the innovative kitchen design, MI Design. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't about destroying someone else. It's about reclaiming what was always rightfully yours. Your value, your expertise, your future. Preston had called me replaceable, but in the end, he was the one who couldn't be replaced, because he'd never actually been essential in the first place. I had been the heart of that business all along. Now I was the heart of my own. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like and share. Your support helps stories like Astrid's reach others who might be facing similar workplace struggles. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? Share your experience in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about resilience, redemption, and the sweet satisfaction of rising from the ashes stronger than before.